The minimalist lifestyle and minimalist practices are really made up of behaviors and mindsets, and both are necessary for lasting change. For me, it started with behaviors and then the mindset started to follow. And as James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, tells us, the actions that we take every day are a vote for the person that we wish to become. So today, let's talk about 5 little habits that you can adopt in your practice of simplifying your life. All right, the first is Alan's equation. And you'll have never heard of this before because Alan is my dad. Recently, he and I were talking about how we weigh and consider bringing in new things to our home. And I really liked the way that he articulated it, so I'm now calling it Alan's equation. So essentially, when he's considering bringing something new into his home, he looks at what is the value that it will add, and from that, he subtracts what it will demand of him. And the result of that equation is the true value that it can potentially have in his life. So he's not just looking at the potential value add, he's also considering all of the responsibilities that come with anything that comes into his home. So for instance, a friend of his recently offered him a drill press. And a drill press could be convenient to have on hand, but it's a pretty large tool. So he had to consider what's the space, what's the potential maintenance that goes into something like this, does the value that it adds outweigh the responsibility that it's going to ask of him? And he decided that the true value is not high enough for him to keep that thing in his home. Now, let's imagine that we actually put numbers around this, and I'll give you an example from my life. Some of you know that I am struggling with toys. I'm just struggling with letting go of them. We actually have a fairly curated collection, but I still think that we have more than we need and more than are adding true value. So I'm going to do it with numbers. I'm going to use 2 scales of 1 to 5. For the value add, the 1 is adding no value, and the 5 is it's adding the most value it possibly could. For the demand, it's demanding nothing, would be a 1, and a 5 being demanding the most it could possibly demand of me. So with the toys, I would say that for 90% of the toys, their value add is probably about a 2, maybe a 3. I feel like I'm being generous giving it a 3, but I'll go ahead and give it a 3. Then what are they demanding? I would say the demand is about a 4. So now we have 3 minus 4 equals a -1. So the true value is a -1. And I'm making all of this up, so I get to decide whether or not -1 is enough. And in my book, I'd say -1 is not enough. I'd really prefer those toys to have gotten a 3 in my book. Now that I've run that equation, I have to be honest with myself and consider the possibility that the toys need to go. The next habit is to declutter daily. Every minimalist, every decluttering expert, every organizing expert understands that decluttering is not something that happens once. Yes, it happens in this kind of big, monumental, kind of exciting way, potentially once, but hopefully it doesn't have to happen again at that scale because you maintain it. And you do that by decluttering daily. So the first thing you want to do is just find a dedicated place where you can put a donation box or a trash bag or, I don't know, one of those reusable shopping bags. Anything that in and of itself is donatable. Find a place for that in your home and then make it a daily practice to find something to put in there. If you've already done your initial purge, then this is just good home maintenance. If you haven't done it yet, then you're getting to practice that decision making every single day, and you're doing so in a way that won't lead to decision fatigue. All right, the third habit is to slow or pause your consumption. One of the biggest challenges that people run into with the decluttering process is they don't stop consuming. So they let go of things, but then they bring more things in. And so they are fundamentally undermining themselves through the entire consumption process. And there's probably reasons for that. But let's just talk about a few different ways that you can slow or pause your consumption. One of the first ideas is to eliminate purchasing power from your phone. So get rid of Apple Pay, delete the credit card or debit card connected to that account, PayPal, anything else like that. Eliminate any shopping apps like Amazon or Walmart or whatever app is on your phone that you have a tendency to shop on or do a lot of purchasing through. Delete it. It doesn't have to be forever. You're basically trying to break a bad habit that might exist, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. Essentially with this, you're actually trying to make purchasing just a little bit more inconvenient so that it slows you down. Another idea is to take a hiatus from spending it all. So doing a no buy day or week or month or year. I can't imagine doing a year, but I did do a month once and it was enlightening. It taught me a lot about myself. Now with no buys, you're still buying essentials, like you're getting food, but you're taking a pause on a lot of other things. If you want to know more about no buys, just type it into the search bar on YouTube. You'll find plenty of examples of people talking about their no buys and all the different rules and, stipulations that they put in place for themselves, because everyone can do it a little bit differently. Another idea is to create for yourself a zero-based budget. So this is basically a budget where you take your income, you subtract all of your expenses, and at the bottom, the number should be zero. Essentially, you're assigning a job to every dollar from your income. And then you're actually tracking those expenses regularly. And what that will do is, if you're having to look at the expenses go up on your credit card or the amount of money in your checking account go down, it has a very sobering effect and can help to slow down your spending. I've got a couple other ideas that I think are similar. One is the 72-hour rule. So basically, you get an idea of something you want to purchase, you write it down on a list, check it 3 days later. Do you still want to purchase that item? This is great with kids. Another idea, very similar, just structured a little differently, is to have a dedicated buying day, whether that's once a week or once a month. This is particularly helpful with Amazon. So say you don't follow my suggestion to delete Amazon from your phone, then instead slow down your purchasing to only once a week. This actually comes from Callie from But First Coffee. And what she says is that because she has to wait until, Saturday or Sunday, whatever her purchasing day is, she ends up seeing the full amount of all of the individual one-off items that she wanted to purchase. And if she'd been purchasing them individually, she would be thinking like, oh, well, that was $15, no big deal. It was $8, not an issue. But once she sees the full effect of a whole week of small purchases, and it's a $200 bottom line, it has a very different effect on her mind. And suddenly there's a lot of stuff in the shopping cart that doesn't really seem essential. So now I have a habit, and I'm referring to it as 3B because I think it's very related to number 3 of pausing or slowing your consumption. And 3B is to replace shopping. So if shopping is a habit in your life, and it might be without you realizing it, I didn't notice how much time I was spending just browsing Amazon on my phone. I was like, I don't have a shopping habit, because I'm an elder millennial, at least I think that I'm in that category. And so in my mind, a shopping habit was you get up and you go to the store. The fact that I was browsing Amazon on my phone, it just never occurred to me that, oh yeah, I'm shopping when I do that, and I'm doing it all the time. And so what we know from habit formation research is that in order to break a bad habit, you have to replace it with a good one. If you have a shopping habit, then you need to be thinking about what are you going to replace the time currently spent shopping with? And think about things like quality leisure, something that you would really look forward to. Maybe you're gonna bake more bread. Maybe you're gonna do some knitting, go for a walk, exercise, call your mom. Any of these things would be great, but you do need something to replace the shopping. The next idea is to never have empty hands. And this idea actually comes from both my husband and my father, though separately. But they both work in manual labor jobs. And what they've learned from their work is that anytime you have to go back to the truck to retrieve a tool, you're in the middle of a job, you gotta go get some tool that you don't currently have, you first look around the job site and you pick up anything that is no longer needed and at the end of the day is going to have to go back to the truck. You don't want to waste that trip walking with empty hands. And I think that idea can be applied within our homes. When I leave the bedroom in the morning, I quickly scan around, do we have any water glasses? That's typically something that has, migrated into the bedroom. Typically when I'm leaving the bedroom, I'm heading to the kitchen. So it's the perfect time for me to grab the water glasses and bring them in. It helps to save a trip that I might have to make at the end of the night when I'm tidying up the house. I don't want anyone to hear this idea as me suggesting that you tidy all day long. That's probably going to wear you out, especially if you're in a phase of life where you have small children. You're just going to exhaust yourself. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you're already making the trip. Use the momentum of the trip that's already happening, grab a couple of things. You only have 2 hands, so it's okay if it's only 2 things, and bring them with you. All right, so the 5th habit that I recommend is to get inspired. We're more likely to adopt habits if we are surrounding ourselves with influences that demonstrate the people that we want to become, the behaviors that we want to be engaging in. So think about the resources that are available to you that can help you with that. Do you have a friend who's really good at decluttering or keeps a really tidy home? Spend more time with them. Ask them what their secrets are. Obviously, you can find blogs and YouTube accounts, social media channels, books that can be influences as well. But I do think it's really helpful to remember that no matter how hard a content creator tries, it's always going to be difficult to give a full picture of what's happening here. And depending on whether or not you've even watched all of their videos, maybe you've seen all of the Minimal Mom's videos where her house is spick and span and perfectly clean, but you happen to miss the one where she showed you what it looks like on a daily basis because people still live there and it's still messy sometimes. I think inspiration is important, but it's also important in this process to make sure that you're getting as much influence as possible from people who are actually in your life, because you can get a more well-rounded picture. Again, as a content creator, I don't want to suggest that anyone is trying to be disingenuous. It's simply to say that there are limits to the medium. The other thing to think about is, are you following anyone whose influence is potentially detracting from what you're hoping to accomplish? So maybe there are people who you follow who always go to Target every season to show you all the new home decor. I absolutely love those. Also, huge fan of grocery hauls. But if you find that any of those influences are detracting from your overall goal, again, we're going back to the James Clear quote I mentioned at the beginning, which is, every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become. So if any of these influences are getting in the way of that person that you are working to become, you don't have to say goodbye to them forever, but you may have to temporarily pause their influence in your life. I've had lots of people who I love to watch and learn from that I've taken breaks from, and then later, when I was a little bit more confident in who I am and who that person was that I was trying to become, then I could go back and I could enjoy their content with the necessary mental and emotional boundaries in place. All right, well, those are my 5 ideas for this week. I'm sure I'll cover the subject again in the future. Thank you so much for stopping by, and until next time.